we basically have three things that we're covering, right? We're covering altitude, aptitude, and attitude, right? So these are dealing with the mountain, because the mountain is its own beast, and then just kind of where you're at physically and mentally, preparation. So normally we think of this as just being something that's purely physical. And there's certainly an element of truth to that. However, I would argue that it is very much a mental game. And so if you have, I'm seeing a lot of nodded heads from alumni, like, yeah, it's a mental game. So if you've ever had to do any sort of endurance achievement, like running a marathon or something like that, it's a big part of that is gritting it out. So something that Andy says that I really like is anybody can make it up a mountain. You're just going to make it up either based on grit or based on athleticism. And the more you have of one, the less you need of the other. So I would argue that the more you're doing in the athleticism department, the less grit you're going to need. Makes it a little bit easier. But that being said, there's always an element of grit to it. You never completely eliminate that. It's just always there. It's just the nature of the beast. So, good. So, two big things about the altitude are going to be you're dealing with less oxygen and resizing presentations. You're dealing with less oxygen. This can impact you in one of three ways. There's, I'm trying to remember these, there's three acronyms. There's acute mountain sickness, high altitude pulmonary edema, and, we don't have HACE on there, but HACE. So anyhow, there's a few different things that are potentially going to happen to your body from a medical standpoint, and in order to prevent those, we're trying to ensure that your cardio and your breathing is to a point where it reduces the likelihood of that happening. Ultimately, it's one of those things that it happens to people that are in really good shape, and that doesn't happen to people that are in bad shape. It's sort of weird. You can't entirely account for how the altitude is going to impact people.
You're 50 or 14 years, you have a problem, and all of a sudden
I didn't have trouble with the altitude really bothering me much at all for the first several years when I was a lot younger, and then at some point I just had a couple years where it did start bothering me. So it wasn't pure. It's not a one-to-one correlation. It's not like, well, if I get this fit, then there's not a chart that's going to graph it and make it really easy. There's some just general likelihood of if your cardio is poor, you can't keep up with stuff, then sure that's going to impact it. But you just have to take into account your breathing. There's less oxygen in the air, less oxygen to your lungs and your bloodstream, just getting everywhere in your body. And so focusing on what you're doing for breathing is going to be a huge component of this.
We used to cover all this on next line if you wanted to, we'll send that out.
Yeah.
But we know how to do altitude sickness, we also know ways to help mitigate that. But in this module, just be prepared physically the best you can, you'll be good.
Yeah. So in regards to that, I know you're like, okay, you're throwing out a bunch of these terms and these acronyms, and it sounds really crazy, and like my head's going to explode from the altitude. It's like, that's not going to happen. This isn't Mars Attack, and nobody's playing yodeling or anything in the background. The big thing here is if we identify as trail guides that there's an issue with that, I mean, we have, I think, 4 to 6 nurses on this trip. So, like, first of all, we've never had more medical personnel on our trip before. Secondly is we're going to be monitoring you guys, and if we see there's an issue, well, we're going to be yelling at you to drink more water and take a break and do things like that. But if we see that and identify that there's a problem, then we'll send you down the mountain, or we'll make a call as far as ensuring that your safety comes first. So don't worry about that. We're not trying to drag everybody up the mountain and get to the peak. Honestly, your safety is more important. But in addition to breathing, we've got hydration. This is really huge, right? So in addition to oxygen, you also need H2O. So low humidity, dry air, all these types of things are impacting how your body is responding to the temperature. And anyhow, you're going to be sweating a little bit, but honestly, you might not even realize that you're sweating. You might not even realize that you don't really feel super warm. You're like, oh, it feels fairly comfortable out. I don't really feel like I need to hydrate a lot, but you do. Yeah, you absolutely do need to hydrate.
You won't even feel thirsty, but your body is dehydrated.
Exactly. So it's knowing ahead of time I need to be drinking, not waiting for my normal responses like I do in everyday life, where I just go, okay, now I'm thirsty, I'll go ahead and drink. You're drinking regardless of whether or not you think you're thirsty. Yeah. At the point that you're like, oh, I'm thirsty now, you're playing catch up, and you better hope you're at base camp, because you can't be doing that during a day hike. But again, this isn't that hard. If you're drinking regularly and you're checking kind of intervals, I know it may sound a little crude, but quite honestly, if you're not peeing a lot throughout the day, then you're probably not drinking enough. So you should be making multiple pit stops. Let's put it that way. All right. So how does this break down for you? Burning calories. You're looking. I think we've seen it. It can vary somewhere between 4,000 to 6,000 calories a day. So we should probably on average talking about 5,000 calories a day. You're like, huh? That's a little more than I normally eat. Or maybe not, I don't know. So yes, we will be trying to give you guys a lot of calories, and we will be encouraging that you're consuming a lot of calories. Flip side of that, you're probably going to lose some weight. Marcus talked about that earlier. I think the first year we went, pretty much all of the guys lost probably at least 5 pounds.
Even guys who didn't have hardly fat.
Yeah.
Some of it blocks a lot of weight, but a lot of it's also just your body's just consuming calories.
Yeah, you just got a furnace that's just eating up everything, and so you're like, man, if my metabolism did this all the time, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, we kind of already talked about breathing. So bearing weight, that's probably a little bit off on some of the numbers there, but I would say it's probably closer to 30 or 40 pounds with a full pack, especially if you guys could probably go a little bit smaller this year with more towards the 40 than the 60. I don't think we're going to be doing quite as much. There's not going to be as much hiking between the trailhead and the first base camp. So we'll be able to account for that a little bit easier.
And some of why we ask you guys to bring more backcountry gear is for the fact that we have to go to a plan B. There are other 14ers that we're going to do, but they require a little bit more backpacking. It may be 2 miles versus 1. So
yeah.
We just ask that you bring it. There's been years where we unfortunately haven't used it just because we end up relocating to an area that it's just hard to just due to the nature of it. But it's better to have it and not need it than we relocate and then you realize, oh crud, I don't have anything. I'm as well, so.
Yeah.
So that's why that range is.
So with some of these in mind, as far as weights, like you're going to be carrying maybe a couple liters, 2-3 liters of water on your back when we're doing a day hike. So taking that into account with. Jessica's like, no, more like 7 or 10 liters of water. Sorry, you did. So, Andy, go ahead. So just thinking about how this is impacting you, breathing. Breathing is really, really important. Just keep breathing. So this is going to put some stress on the old ticker. You're going to be breathing heavier. Your cardio is really important. So a big thing for this comes down to probably recommend, honestly, just hiking, walking, throwing some of that pack on. If you want to just basically set up your day pack, throw that on, go for a 4-mile hike, for a 10-mile hike, doing stuff like that is just going to be a good preparation for it. I understand I'm not going to suggest you go out and hike 10 miles tomorrow if you're like, I haven't gone that far in a while. You scale up to it, just go hike for a mile, go hike for 3 miles, and just kind of build it up. Doing that a few times a week will build up some preparation for that. Your other, I would say, just it's really more of a lifestyle change. Is making a shift from getting away from like elevators towards stairs. It's really just a good general recommendation, but specifically for this trip. Andy and I do this all the time at work. We're like, hey, we're on the. Well, now you're on the first floor, but he just takes a break and he'll go run up and down the stairs.
Yeah.
When I say run, I mean he'll march up and down the stairs.
So for exercise, like orders on my team now, I've got moved into it. We're in a 6-story building and we'll go do stairs pretty hard for 30 minutes, twice, sometimes 2 times a week. Stairs are probably the closest way to simulating what we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So imagine climbing stairs for 12 hours and that's been working. So that's basically what we're doing. So
Yeah, I mean, if you have a Stairmaster or something.
Stairmaster, yeah, those are good. Stairmasters work, but they only usually go up. You need to be able to go down too, so doing physical stairs, you get the both up and down.
Yeah, and part of that there is the impact, right? So that's the second part. It's not just your heart's just pumping a lot more because it's working a lot harder because you've got less oxygen, but also your body's gonna, your knees and your ankles, your shock absorbers, effectively when you're going downhill, are going to be taking some impact. So getting accustomed to handling that is going to be good. So doing some basic things like squats and lunges. You don't need to go. I mean, if you up to do it, I know Steven's like, I'm gonna squat 400 pounds, and he can do that, and that's awesome. But you don't need to necessarily go develop some workout routine like that. You can just do basic, like, boom, I'm just doing an air squat, or I'm just doing a lunge, and that's all you've got to do. Just do some of those and kind of work it into, hey, I'm standing at my desk, or I'm on a phone call. I know it sounds weird, it may look a little weird, but honestly, it's just getting in the habit of doing things like that in maybe some odd situations. So we'll talk about that in a sec. The other thing I put on there was farmer's carry. Just being okay carrying stuff, because if you're going to have a little bit of weight on your back, it also simulates kind of the additional pressure you're going to feel where you feel a little bit heavier. So just carrying stuff feels good. Yeah.
I was going to say, the thing I do is I pretty much do only Stairmaster. I think a metric for me is like, if I can get an hour on the Stairmaster,
Yeah.
like the number 8 setting or whatever, like, I'm doing pretty good.
Okay.
Because you're going to rest as we're going up the mountain.
Right.
Various points, but getting used to breathing hard, the impact of walking up the steps. Elliptical is not going to help you on this because you're not getting the impact.
Right.
Treadmill.
Yeah, treadmill looking good. Putting a treadmill on incline. As much as you can, I would actually encourage you to try to do it outside. I understand temperatures can be a little unpleasant to work with that, but that's also kind of the point. You're going to be dealing with colder, unpleasant temperatures. So getting outside and getting on a trail or going out and riding on a bike and doing that with uneven terrain and stuff, that's going to be really beneficial there. So part of the reason I say that is you're dealing with being in just kind of odd situations in terms of the terrain being uneven, just the whole trip being a little out of whack of my normal routine. And so it's just getting into this mindset of being comfortable being uncomfortable. So I've suggested this in years past, and I think a couple people have taken me up on it. I highly recommend it. I've been doing it for a while. Is doing stuff like take cold showers or walk up and down stairs in kind of some odd ways, like take if you can, take 2 steps at a time, or walk down sideways, right? Just things like that. I know it sounds really goofy, and it probably looks a little goofy, and your friends are going to be like, what are you doing? Who walks downstairs like that? But when you get opportunities to do those things, that it's sort of just mentally preparing you for the fact that you're doing stuff that you're like, this is really odd. I don't know what I'm doing here. My body doesn't know what I'm doing. So again, we're going to just have to be flexible to adapt with the weather and temperatures and stuff. I don't know why we've adapted to be flexible. It's a little redundant. Yeah. The biggest thing at the end of that is just mindset-wise, it's just trust your guides. Be okay with the fact that we're going to ask you to do some things a bit weird, or like, I don't want to take a break right now, or I do want to take a break right now. It's like you can't take a...
Chevy pickup.
That's
Please
cool.
make your way to the front of the store.
That's not yours, is it? Brown Chevy pickup? Cool.
I was going to say, this sounds kind of new agey, but I do think self-talk is a are you talking about that, like, an important piece?
Yeah, I mean, that's just part of the mindset.
I'm saying, like, in my head going up, I'm like, man, this is so awesome. It's such a great time. I'm feeling really good,
Yeah.
As a influencer, even though, like,
Yeah.
it sucks.
I mean, it's basically like the little engine that could. Right? Like I can do it. I think I can. I mean, very very much in a sense of not down talking yourself or talking yourself out of it. Because as soon as you say like I can't do this, you're just fighting yourself the whole way.
By the end of the week, I really do look forward to like the next like my body's like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I really do feel like.
Yeah.
The first mountain's always the hardest.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly because it's here. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? It should get harder as the week goes along, but once you've done one, you're like, wow, I can do this. And so that is a very big point of that. Cool. Any questions regarding preparation for that?
Good, we're making some good time.